All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep into some pretty murky waters. We're talking Pakistani politics.
Always a fascinating topic.
Oh, yeah. Specifically, we're taking a close look at this letter. An open letter written by no less than former Prime Minister Imran Khan.
It's his second one, actually, addressed directly to the Chief of Army Staff.
You know, the cricket star turned politician. Elected in 2018, ousted in 2023.
Quite the journey.
And since his removal from office, well, Khan's been pretty outspoken about the military's involvement in Pakistan's political landscape.
And he doesn't hold back in this letter, that's for sure.
Not one bit. So what exactly is he saying? What's the gist of it?
At its core, he's arguing that the military meddling in politics is not only tarnishing their reputation,
Right.
it's actually, in his words, destabilizing the entire country and chipping away at their democracy.
Okay, so that's a pretty hefty accusation to just throw out there. What's he basing this on?
So, in his first letter, he laid out 6 key points. 1, he alleges that there was election manipulation going on, claims that intelligence agencies were involved in rigging even before people cast their votes.
Wow.
He's also pointing to the forced passage of that 26th constitutional amendment,
Right.
which he believes was a move to control the judiciary. Then you've got those controversial PICA amendments, that's the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act, which he argues are being used to straight up silence dissent, basically squash any free speech.
The PICA laws. Yeah, those sound a little concerning. We should definitely dig into those a bit more later on.
Oh, absolutely.
What else? What other points is he making?
Okay, so he's also highlighting the economic havoc, the devastation that he says is directly resulting from all this political instability.
Right.
He claims his party, the PTI, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, is being targeted, calls it state terrorism.
Yep.
And his last point is that he believes state institutions, which should be serving the people, are being used instead for political engineering, completely going against their constitutional duties. In his view.
So he's basically painting this picture of a system that's gone completely rogue. But we have to remember, right, this is coming from Imran Khan, a former prime minister with his own political ambitions. How much weight should we give his claims, considering Pakistan's history?
That's a key point. Context is everything, right? Pakistan has a history of military coups, and even when they're not directly in control, the army has always had a lot of sway behind the scenes. So Khan's accusations need to be understood within that complex historical framework.
So is he just a disgruntled ex-politician trying to stir the pot? Or are his experiences evidence of something bigger, something more systemic? He does offer some pretty specific personal examples to back up his claims.
He does. He talks about his own time in Adiala jail, how he was subjected to harsh treatment, solitary confinement on death row, denial of basic amenities, legal rights, barely any contact with his family or lawyers.
Wow.
He even names a colonel at the jail who he claims acted like he was running an occupying force.
So are these just isolated incidents? Or do they point to a broader pattern of human rights violations? Is this something more widespread?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? But Khan insists these aren't isolated cases at all. Like, he goes on to describe the pressure judges were under to convict him and his wife, Bushra Bibi.
Oh.
He even tells a story about one judge whose health took a nosedive because of the stress, suggesting there was a real push to influence the verdict against him.
And he brings up that violence against PTI supporters on May 9th, 2023 and November 26th, 2024.
Right. And that targeting of women associated with his party, that really gets to him. He specifically says that the level of aggression directed at women, especially his wife Bushra Bibi, is something he's never seen in Pakistan. He sees it as a sign of, well, moral decay within the system.
Let's go back to those PICA laws for a second. You mentioned that they have something to do with online speech. How do they fit into Khan's overall argument here?
Khan believes these amendments are being used to stifle internet freedom and silence any opposing voices online, which, if true, raises some pretty big concerns about freedom of expression in Pakistan.
Yeah.
And he goes on to say that it could have a ripple effect on the country's economy. It might even jeopardize their GSP plus trade status, which is pretty crucial for their economic growth.
So he's drawing a direct line between these alleged actions by the military and the economic struggles that Pakistan is facing right now.
Exactly. He sees the military's actions as directly responsible for things like capital flight, a decline in investment, rising poverty, and unemployment.
He's really laying out a stark picture of a nation that's on the verge of collapse, isn't he?
Well, he also suggests that what the military is doing is eroding the public support they need to be effective in the fight against terrorism. And that's where his argument starts to get really interesting.
Okay.
Because he's essentially saying that the very security of Pakistan is on the line if this alleged power grab continues.
So here we have a former prime minister painting a pretty dramatic picture of what's happening in Pakistan. Makes you wonder, is he just exaggerating to score political points? Or is Pakistan really at a breaking point?
Those are the questions we'll dig into in part 2 of this deep dive. We'll explore the potential outcomes for Pakistan and try to figure out what role the military might play in shaping the future of the country.
It's hard to know, right?
Yeah.
How much is genuine concern and how much is political maneuvering?
Yeah, Pakistan's a complicated place. But, even if Khan's exaggerating a little, his accusations really bring to light that tension that's always simmered between the civilian government and the military in Pakistan. Like this power struggle, it's been a constant theme throughout their history.
You're talking about their history of military coups, right?
Exactly. Pakistan's seen more than its fair share of military takeovers. And even when they're not technically running the show, the military establishment has always had a heavy hand in how things are run. So the real question here is, has that balance of power, that kind of delicate dance, been disrupted to a point where it could actually cause serious damage?
Well, Khan certainly seems to think so. He's making the case that the military is acting more like an occupying force, not a protector.
Yeah, it's a powerful narrative for sure, and one that could resonate with a lot of Pakistanis, especially those who are already feeling disillusioned with the way things are going, politically, economically. Remember, Khan's not just pointing fingers, he's trying to rally public sentiment. He wants people to push back against what he sees as military overreach.
Do you think that could actually work? I mean, could public opinion really force the military to back down?
It's tough to say, but what Khan's doing is tapping into a very real fear about the future of Pakistan. His letter's not just a laundry list of complaints, it's a warning. Like, wake up, people. This is a slippery slope to authoritarianism.
That he's asking, is this the kind of Pakistan we want? A place where you can't speak your mind, where human rights are violated and the economy is in shambles?
Exactly. And those are questions that should concern everyone, not just Pakistanis. The whole world has a stake in a stable and prosperous Pakistan.
So where do we go from here? What are the potential outcomes? What's the best case scenario, and what's the worst we could be looking at?
Well, the most optimistic outcome, the best case scenario, would be that this growing public pressure, maybe fueled by Khan's campaign, forces the military to ease up, dial back their involvement in politics. That could then create space for a real, genuine democratic transition, a civilian government that's truly accountable to the people.
That would be a huge shift. Do you think it's actually possible?
It would definitely require a major change in attitude on both sides. The military and the civilian leadership would both have to prioritize the nation's well-being over their own agendas. And frankly, seeing the level of distrust right now, that's a tough ask.
And what are the other side of the coin? What's the worst case scenario here?
The most worrying possibility is that Pakistan just spirals further into chaos. If the political violence escalates, if the economy keeps tanking, the military might feel like they have to step in more directly, maybe even impose martial law, try to regain control.
That doesn't seem like a real solution, though, does it? It's just more of the same cycle of military intervention.
Well, history shows us that these interventions rarely fix things in the long run. You might get temporary stability, but at a huge cost to democratic institutions and human rights.
So we're really at a crossroads. A lot depends on what happens in the next few months, the next few years. And not just for Pakistan, for the whole region.
The stakes are incredibly high, no doubt about it. Pakistan's stability, their fight against terrorism, their potential for growth, all of it has a huge impact on the global community. This isn't something we can just ignore.
So what can we do? People outside of Pakistan, I mean.
Yeah.
Can we play a role in steering things in a more positive direction?
Well, like we said, awareness is key. Understanding the nuances, the history, seeing the different perspectives, that's the first step.
Right.
Then it's about engaging in conversations, challenging misinformation, supporting the voices within Pakistan that are fighting for democracy and human rights. Those are all things we can do.
It's about recognizing that we're all connected. What happens in one corner of the world can have a huge impact everywhere else. What happens in Pakistan matters.
Exactly. We're all global citizens, and we
Right.
have a responsibility to stay informed and involved in these issues, even when they seem far away.
Let's circle back to Khan's letter for a minute. Putting his motivations aside for a second, he's really started a conversation, hasn't he?
He has. Whether you like the guy or not, his letters made people confront some hard truths about Pakistan. It's a challenge to the way things are, a demand for accountability, a wake-up call.
It's a reminder that the fight for democracy, for a better future, never really ends.
Absolutely. And those are values worth fighting for in Pakistan and everywhere else.
Yeah, it's a pretty crucial moment for Pakistan. So much uncertainty about what's next.
No doubt. It really highlights how fragile democracy can be, doesn't it?
It does.
It's not some end goal you reach. It's something you constantly have to work at, nurture.
You always have to be vigilant, ready to defend those principles,
Yeah,
even when it's hard.
exactly.
So what about us? I mean, people watching all this unfold outside of Pakistan, is there anything we can do or should do?
Well, for starters, like we said, awareness is huge. Understanding the situation, the history, the different perspectives involved, that's crucial. And then having those conversations, challenging misinformation when you see it, supporting the people in Pakistan who are fighting for democracy and human rights, those are all things we can do.
Being informed and engaged global citizens. Recognizing that we're all interconnected. What happens in one part of the world affects us all.
Couldn't agree more. Pakistan's stability, their economy, their role in the fight against terrorism, those all have a direct impact on the international community. We can't afford to bury our heads in the sand.
What about Imran Khan's letter? Where do you think that fits into all of this? What role will it play?
Well, it's definitely been a catalyst. Whether you agree with his views or not, his letter has sparked a much-needed conversation, a conversation about the very essence of Pakistan, I'd say.
It's forced people to look in the mirror, right? Confront some uncomfortable realities.
Yeah, it's a challenge to the status quo, a
Right.
demand for accountability. It's a wake-up call.
A reminder that the fight for democracy, for justice, for a better future, it never really ends.
You got it. It takes continuous effort, courage, and a belief in the power of people to change their own destiny.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into Imran Khan's letter and its implications for Pakistan, it certainly gives us a lot to ponder.
A lot to ponder indeed. This story is far from over. There are many chapters yet to be written. The decisions made by Pakistan's leaders, its people, and the international community will shape the narrative from here.
We encourage you to keep digging into this complex and compelling story. Seek out diverse voices and viewpoints. Challenge your own assumptions. And stay engaged. The future of Pakistan, and quite possibly the world, depends on it.
Maybe sometime down the road we'll revisit this on the deep dive, see where things have landed. But until then, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.